All right, I'm here with Harry Slattery, the primal fuckhead, and today we're going to discuss how the internet raised us. And the main reason why I'm hitting on this is because I feel like this is a more accessible topic that pretty much everyone who's watching our videos can relate to. And I've noticed that most of our videos that are conversations, whether it's on postmodernism, which is contemporary philosophy, or semi-contemporary philosophy, since we're apparently moving past that, and singing and culture have gotten the most views. So I was just like, maybe this one will get views too. People will be more interested in this. So yeah, let's start there. How has the internet raised us?
Um, I was thinking the internet is sort of a simulacrum. Like, uh, when you talk about, oh, if I had a clone, I'd have to like murder him like immediately. And the internet is like a simulacrum for reality. So it has the sort of recreational, legal, professional trappings to an extent, or attempts at trappings of the real world, real life, like there's a term in like extremely online anime fans, probably 4chan too, that's like 3D women because like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it's like you mean women, right? But because anime women are 2D, right?
Right, right.
But like really, I mean, everything is sort of 2D on computers. Everything is like it looks slightly different. Like
Yeah,
for instance, you have this probably a certain amount of glare that like me with my human eye wouldn't kind of see. And there might be some like aliasing around your head that makes it look extra pointy at the top, right? For instance.
yeah.
Um,
I have like a halo that attached itself to my head, and then left the top part open.
so that's the sort of semi-objective aspect of the internet as like a method of social organization, right? And organizing information. It's like this layer above that um kind of like you know uh being next to someone versus being like, hey, yeah, we're going over to John and Carrie's malt shop, yelling over to someone was kind of the 1800s version of the internet, or just different forms of communication, different
Yeah,
levels.
communication. Yeah, for sure.
But it's a heterodox thing, I think, and that's why you have like parts of the internet. You have uh like my experience of the internet, because I think it's both you have these kind of overall parts, and then you have kind of biomes. You have parts that move sort of like tectonic plates,
Yeah,
so to speak, and like maybe one is subducted, like E-bomb's world is subducted, and it's no longer, the internet. It's kind of the old internet, right? Or like every site from the .com bubble, every like archive site with like a weird ass color scheme that was started in 2008. Um, there's that aspect, which is the objective aspect, like I was saying. Then the subjective aspect to me, and I'm sure you're familiar with this too, from you seem like a fairly online person, but you seem like you were more online in the past than you are now,
yeah,
possibly.
for sure. Yeah, that's exactly what it was when I was younger, especially in high school. That's when I used to go visit forums and play video
Mhm.
games and all sorts of stuff. But as I got older, I became more of an internet recluse, sort of like watching the background, reading
Mhm.
comments, not even liking videos, not even commenting. Every now and then I'll comment or like, but I just forget. I forget to interact with it. It doesn't feel as like it draws me in as much.
It's there was this discussion on the PCP, the Procrastinators podcast, which the anime former anime YouTuber, now I don't know what the fuck she does. She probably like works at a 7-Eleven in Nevada or something. I don't know, very interesting person. Uh, they had this sort of discussion in one of the episodes of the podcast, I believe, about like where the internet will go. And it used to be that the internet wasn't as centralized as it is now. You know, you had a lot of forums, a lot of blogs. It
Yeah,
was a more like personalist approach, sort of
yeah, for sure.
like you know, Oregon Trail versus like everybody moving to New York.
Yeah, it's more of it allows multiplicity, which is why it's such a good postmodern for what's it called? Format, as well as like for shantification too, stuff like
Mm.
that.
Like and it's also a way because say you have an interest, right? Then how many people before the internet would share your interest? You know,
Right.
you might have conventions where you go to, but it's gonna be more limited. That's a limiting factor on it. It's a limiting factor on the reproduction of the fandom itself, which is in its own way a social thing. So I
Yeah.
think uh you also take that with like nerddom. It's a different thing pre and post internet because of the availability of sources, all this other stuff. The main thing I thought a couple minutes before starting this podcast is that there's an aspect with the internet, as there is with all technology and its utilization. Like you watch these kind of sci-fi series like The Boys or Black Mirror or Upload. Um, I've been liking sci-fi recently, but I mainly like sci-fi that isn't just like pure technology. Like, oh, wouldn't it be neat if we had this or that technology? Cowboy Bebop, um, Fired on Mars was the one I watched recently. Um, then there's this Brazilian series. There's dystopias, all that other stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which which isn't as sci-fi in the sense of, you know, what technology represents in people. What else is there? Kind of Mr. Robot, but that's more sort of like low sci-fi, you know, in a way, because it's more grounded. Um, but there's an aspect of the technology thing, but then there's also an aspect of this heightened interaction, this heightened paranoia. Like I was shopping at Walmart yesterday, and this woman in this aisle is at first being like, "Oh, what a cute little kid." Then she starts kind of yapping at me. She's like, "Take off those headphones." And I'm like, "I don't feel like it." And she's like, "I make $1,000 a month, you know, from," and I'm like, "What? What's her deal? Is this me? You know, what's her deal?" So when I think of the internet and I think of all these different spheres, like I was watching this Atrioc video, he was talking about these uh financial schemes people put on like TikTok. And one of them was like, so here's what you do. You basically do fraud.
Right, right.
This
Yeah,
other
that's
guy
funny.
was like, now, why take out just one loan for a house? Why not just take out one loan for a house, then take out five more loans, then take out 15 more loans? So it's just extreme hubris, or like this girl who was like, I have this course for selling courses. First thing I do when I get up in the morning is I drink water, then I meditate. It's always with these like new agey types, like,
Yeah.
you know, this obvious stuff, like obviously it's healthy to drink water and
Right,
meditate,
right,
but
right.
they're just like,
This is so profound. This is so
I think
significant. I've
that
discovered
they're
something. I'm enlightened. I have a good product for you. I have something that is worth selling by saying obvious things.
it's just like hot people online who are like,
Yeah,
I'm a
exactly.
billionaire.
The halo effect, man. They're using that halo effect.
Like we couldn't do that, you know? We
Without
couldn't
that,
be like, you know, here's what you do, because people would be like, I don't even want to be a billionaire and look like that, that bum ass ninja. God.
Yeah, that's what makes the internet so interesting. Because I was thinking of how like, because I was looking at my story and how like I spent most of my, not maybe not most, maybe like 1/5 or 1/6 of my childhood or life on the internet, at least. Like, and how like it was a source for watching anime, playing games, chatting with people, porn, all these different things that have like shaped up my strengths and weaknesses and my exposure to things. Like it was a library for me before I even went to the library. Well, no, not that, but more of a library for me than the library itself. I've been to the library. I used to go to the library a lot and sit there and read. But it's just very interesting. So I was just like thinking of like how much it's a part of our lives to the point that we're already in the metaverse in some ways. We're already like hacked in, like locked into sort of like the simulacra, like you said, like we're locked into. Like when you said Mr. Robot is more grounded, it made me think like what makes something more sci-fi is feels like there's this lack of familiarity, like it's not as contemporary. It has I don't know how to put it, but it just I guess sci-fi tends to have this sort of like stretching out towards, it's almost like Buzz Lightyear to infinity and beyond. It has a sense of like you're stretching beyond the current quantity and the current quality that's born from that quantity of things that we interact with. You get like new arrangements. You get like new arrangements in terms of structure, new arrangement in terms of interactions, in terms of language. Like you get, but it's just like, how does this differ from fantasy? Because but it just feels like, um,
I mean, I wrote a paper about that.
yeah, I remember, but I was just thinking of like how like sci-fi sometimes we tend to tie it with materialism, like philosophical materialism, where there's a sense of like things are more opaque, like it's just matter all the way through. It's just uh physics all the way through. There's no sense of any invisible things acting. Everything can be made impactful. Everything can be made explicit in some way, or be brought through a medium that's more explicit for us. So even if we never get in contact with the invisible feature of things, by virtue of being able to make it more explicit and manipulable, there's this sense of like there's no more mystery, there's no more enchantment, and the internet kind of like almost does this to us too as well, where everything feels like everything just feels more explicit and more at your fingertips. So you can look at like you can watch all sorts of videos on stuff. You can like learn all sorts of things. So things kind of lose their real time unfolding. They lose their like that dimension of time to them that allows it to like grow in you to make it more resonant. Does that make sense? Do you think I'm onto something?
I mean, I think, what did you say about quantity and quality? Well, I'll say this is that, um, in terms of the emotions, because I think we overrate these mechanics in like these different stories, like, can Goku beat Superman?
Yeah.
Can Goku beat God? Do you believe in Goku more than you believe in God? Uh, that's a question I wanted to ask you actually, but um, and media, if you think about it, is kind of like a religion in and of itself.
Yeah,
Just
I can see
like,
that.
without the, it's not as serious.
Yeah. It's like
I
playful
mean,
seriousness instead of like serious play.
hmm, I mean, it depends too, because uh I mean, you get autistic enough, and baby, those are some of the most impressive people around. But like, and it's the same thing with religion too. I feel like there's serious play and there's playful seriousness. There's people who take religion as something that, they're more like Dragon Ball Z with it. And they're just like, yeah, God is like Goku. He makes me happy, right? And it doesn't need to be that complex if you think about it.
Yeah.
Life is like, a sort of thing. Life is like a box of chocolates. Um, I forget what the metaphor is for that, but I was gonna say
Or some.
life is knowing when to start and knowing when to stop purely.
Yeah,
And what you start and what you stop, what you don't even start and what you don't even stop, right? That's all life is a bunch of these processes. But then we find also it's not entirely reducible to things that we can name. And there's always a way in which we can sort of get outside of a framework, but also uh, feel sort of nested in, for good or bad, like this bigger thing, which is kind of contradictory in a sense that it's the biggest thing, but we're inside of it, and it's inside of itself.
yeah, yeah. It's very
Um,
interesting. Like, I was thinking sort of like when you mentioned with Goku, I was thinking of sort of like how their afterlife works because people have been asking questions. I was like, I watched different videos and I got different questions. People asking like, how does the afterlife work for this particular creation, anime or the Marvel or the DC world? Like, do people all go to their own? Like, if you're Thor, you just go to Valhalla, and if you're an atheist, you don't go anywhere, or So people are asking questions like that, and I found that interesting because I was just like, there's this sort of like by virtue of allowing multiplicity of multiple paths or like that was redundant, whatever. But allowing like multiple paths and multiple different outcomes for different people, there's this lightness to things. It's not as heavy. It's not as like it's not as urgent
I
as
mean, I feel like that's the same for the internet. Getting back
yeah,
on.
that's exactly what I'm trying to tie it to. I'm trying to tie it to the fact that the internet is kind of like that, where it's just like you get exposed to so many different types of things. Like you can watch all sorts of YouTube videos on people's religious experiences or mystical experiences or conversions. You can watch videos on how people live their day-to-day life. You can watch videos on people doing weird things or people's art, people's you can watch people's thoughts and stuff like that. That it's all laid out in front of you, that it kind of lessens the sense of urgency, it lessens the sense of seriousness. And it might almost sometimes it doesn't feel exactly meaningless, but it feels less meaningful since you have so many options. It becomes like a consumerism thing where it's just like you have all these options for different sodas that none of the sodas are special anymore. No soda is
Like,
special.
I feel like there's also this kind of internet derangement syndrome that a lot of people have. People think like cancel culture is like a new thing that started in like what, like 2015 with Gamergate, but it's totally fucking not. People have been canceling each other all the time. You
Yeah,
know,
usually with death.
with what?
With death.
Yeah. I mean, I meant in a social sense, like
Oh,
I guess you could say witch burnings also, and uh when you
Inquisition.
have a I was watching this weird sort of alt-right adjacent maybe documentary, or I don't know if it was like meaning to be alt-right or this alt-righter just shared it, and it was like on Indo-Europeans and how they were the first ones to get to America or some shit. Um I forget what it was about, but it talked about this guy who murdered someone or some shit, and how he was banished from the tribe and stuff like that. These different, regimes of punishment and stuff, which is, our entire sense of government is an evolving thing. We talk about it, and that's a point that sci-fi has in this stuff, which I
Yeah.
think uh it's a bit overrated technology, because like you see these signs like photo enforced speed limit. Yeah, sure, but I'm still going 120 miles per hour to death grips.
Yeah.
There's no photos being taken of me. That's just cap up there. They can't afford those cameras. And in like 2 weeks I'm gonna be like, oh shit, I got. But it is fun going 120 miles per hour.
Been
But
there.
my car won't go more than 120 miles per hour. I don't get why people drive if you have to go below 100 miles per hour, frankly. You know?
Especially on the highway. Like I used to do that at night whenever I was leaving work on the highway. I'd go as fast as I can. and it got me home super fast. And it was so fun too, like seeing things pass you by. You just take it
Mm.
in, lots of information.
How
So it
far
was
did
just
you
really
live
interesting.
away?
Uh, I don't really remember. I think like it was when no, I wasn't going to work. I was going to visit my friend in like Baltimore, not Baltimore, like King
Mm.
something in Maryland. So
Yeah.
different places like that. Whenever I visited, it was like over a 2 hour drive to get there, and then I'd be coming back at night, and it was just so cool. Since it was like 3 a.m. or 5 a.m., no one was on the road.
Yeah, it takes 2 hours to get there, 1 hour to get back.
But yeah, it was awesome.
Mm.
So it was pretty cool. Anyway, it was dangerous, but still. Anyway,
I think, I mean, there's always like a chance for danger, yeah.
yeah,
But I treat it as like calculated risk. There's
yeah,
always a chance of someone else being stupid, and then if you're doing 120 on the highway, that's slightly stupid, but it's not really that stupid, especially if it's at night and you're like, respectful to other drivers. You don't like tailgate or any shit like
yeah,
that, and
yeah,
you kind of treat it like, this person could unexpectedly do a left turn or something like that. You're aware of all that stuff. You're aware, oh, something could be in the road. If something is in the road, like a tire, you're probably fucked, but it's
yeah,
still fun.
yeah. Yeah, it's pretty
But
cool.
yeah, the multiplicity, the shandification, the sense of all that, like I remember this story. uh I listened to a lot of creepy pastas, and I also listened to a lot of just general, like, reading stuff online, uh, stories about different stuff, radio shows. I've been listening to NPR lately, and NPR is a bit white. Um,
Yeah. Isn't it
but
also kind of liberal or or
it's
progressive or something?
it's fairly liberal, yeah, but then they'll also have, like, ads for, like, BetterHelp and Chevron, which are, like, just kinda neoliberal or kinda just capitalist and destroying the earth and stuff like that.
Times.
So it's like the editorial, I remember hearing, where is it, in, I forget, some place in Palestine, and they were talking about the Israeli sort of intervention there, and I felt like it was a bit too kind of granting the Israeli perspective, but like
Yeah.
I guess they're not far left, but I guess there's faults in being far left too. At the end of the day, you should have not like this politics of like, you know, X is always right, Y is always wrong, but you should have, I think, the politics that, has one of the two, at least the least people hurt and most people helped, is what I
Yeah.
kind of believe in.
Yeah, of course. That's very utilitarian, which I understand. I can see how
And
that's
at times that kind of requires a bit of towing the line, I imagine. But then also towing the line would maybe make you, it's elite capture to a certain extent,
yeah.
where they say jump, you say how high. But anyway, this has gotten off topic because it's so political, but I guess that's because I'm part of the political part of the internet, Twitter, YouTube
Yeah, you are.
nowadays. Because how I evolved, I guess, is um how much time is left. Sort of
At least 10 minutes.
here's my short sort of internet chronology. When I was like 6 or something, what I got into was like Weird Al and shit like that. And Michael Jackson, of course. Just a few music videos, like Beat It or Billie Jean is not my, and also the Weird Al parodies of those videos, or like another one rides the bus, stuff like that. And I watched that, and I also watched Numa Numa, and I watched multiple Numa Numa videos before getting a device of my own,
Yeah, those are
right?
popular.
Huh?
Those are popular.
Yeah, like Resident Evil Numa Numa, because I grew up like sort of playing video games, but also a lot of it was watching my brothers play video games at times. Like Joe would play Resident Evil a lot, or like Tomb Raider, and uh Dylan was a bit more like quarrelsome. Dylan was sort of moody as a kid. I guess we were all moody as kids because our parents were fighting a lot and always kind of like having some shit where they're like, "Ah!" That sort of energy in the house. Or like, we're out, or I'm out for like a few hours at a Lowe's and I'm just kind of like walking around. That's why I think Game Boy Advance SP, that's my best friend as a 6-year-old. Just like because when you're in a fucking Best Buy or a mattress store for 3 hours, you can't do anything but play Pokemon, you know?
Yeah, I grew up playing that at around that age too. But it
Mm,
was on the computer. I didn't have like a portable video game thing with me. I either played it on a computer, or if not, I was outside playing, or
mm.
you know. So it was one of those things. Anyway, what's the rest? So 6 years old, Numa
It's
Numa.
that then I get like I get like a tablet, and the tablet is slow as shit, and I can't really watch videos on the tablet. And this is also what I did when I was like around 6 is look up information on video games, mainly like Kingdom Hearts and Resident Evil, and like read about the lore of the series, and like Final Fantasy too, and like the different weapons and magic and monsters and sort of stuff. And I'd also have a habit of sometimes like, remembering this stuff and being like, oh, this stuff and that stuff, kind of, I don't know, information curiosity. So after that, what I got into when I was able to get onto YouTube was Let's Plays like Chugga Conroy. Um, and I guess that starts the kind of trend of uh I didn't really hang out with people that much through school. Uh, so a lot of the time I spent like interpersonally was like parasocial. So I guess it's kind of like large chunks like Chugga Conroy. I watched all of his Let's Plays or a lot of his Let's Plays and Brain Scratch comms, uh, SGB commentaries, um, a few other things. Listened to a lot of creepy pastas in high school, especially. Uh, then Amazing Atheist started in like middle school and high school. Drunken Peasants podcast. Then uh, at the tail end of that, in like high school, I got into Digi, now Trixie, um, and uh, started watching a lot of analysis videos on YouTube of like movies and stuff. And when I dropped out at like 15, right, that's what I got really deep into was kind of anime, movies. I got less into gaming because video games are pretty expensive and I don't really know how to like pirate video games that much. I mean, I've played like Metroid Fusion on the computer. That's a good game. But like other than that, and it just feels like attentionally a lot of the time it's hard to like focus on a video game because I don't know, it's like sort of you have so much stuff that you could focus on other than that. What else? Like SourceFed, Smosh, Nigahiga, all that comedy stuff, in that sphere. Filthy Frank. Um,
A lot of the stuff you're into is almost predictable to me. Like I could be like you almost get a sense of the kind of person who would watch certain videos. It's
mm.
almost like it fits their personality. You can sort of like see how like it all coalesces together. And I also like the feature of like how like these things sort of like it becomes almost like the internet becomes a thing that interprets itself and adds more to its complexity from its interpretation of itself. So it's like a space expanding to fill itself up. So
Mm.
it's almost like an
I,
infinitely
I
expanding box.
I think it's almost like this. You get a sense of things happening. You feel like more of a sense of the world than you would in like real life and a real job
Yeah,
talking to people. And so, but that can be a sort of a fallacy, which is the thought I was having that I mentioned is there's uh, that I had a couple minutes before the podcast started. You have to notice what you're imagining and what you're missing, right, with the internet,
yeah,
because there's a lot of stuff around like how people like develop their sexuality on the internet, which some of it is going to be a part of like all the rest, and some of it isn't. you know Things start, things end, things coexist, things are unable to coexist. um like for instance, and I think this is also, there's a lot of countervailing trends with different people and inside the same person, even like privacy of yourself versus privacy of others, the sort of relationship of yourself to one person versus a relationship of you to of them to you. um and so this all, I think, complicates how people talk about this stuff, like parasocial relationships, porn, sexuality, uh financial gurus and all this other stuff, because I think a lot of it is it's the exploitation of your attention.
yeah,
It's the exploitation of different assumptions, different fantasies, different um sort of drives, uh and the asymmetric um sort of accommodation of different things. Like, I think there's a big voyeuristic aspect to the internet, right?
yeah, yeah,
Like, everybody watching this video and doesn't comment is a voyeur, and if they do comment, we could be like, hey, that's that fuck you, right? And then they're
yeah,
like, whoa, so there's this, like, you're hearing other people, but it's hard to talk to them, right?
yeah,
Or you don't know who wants to communicate, or like all this other stuff, so it can be
yeah,
very confusing, like with the mechanisms that are put in place, going back to sci-fi and fantasy, versus how they're actually expected to be used by this person, that person, and the expectations versus reality, like what someone actually thinks is their standards or would say explain their standards are, and uh whether people listen to those, and whether those are their standards, and all this other stuff. I think you get the internet and there's always this second guessing to things. There's always uh like, I was watching this video on TikTok where this guy rolls different glass jars downstairs in Italy, I think. And I took that and I looked through the comment section and I saw, like, I don't know, 20 different languages, right? And I was like, wow, like, this video, it's so popular in all these different languages because it doesn't have any dialogue whatsoever. You just get it, like
yeah, yeah,
this one glass jar that doesn't break. And this guy was like, I get so fucking angry when it doesn't break. And I was like, I'm the exact opposite. So you'll have people give a take on the internet. And
yeah,
in a lot of different languages, it's just like, there was this story about Croatian Wikipedia and how it was kind of this sort of haven for neo-Nazis who like edited all the information on it and stuff like that for a couple years or something like that. So we don't know, what people are talking about on like Arabic uh sort of Twitter or like Japanese Twitter, though you can translate it, but the translation will be imperfect And then how do you talk to them? Do you like that's an interesting convo in and of itself,
Yeah,
the connectivity of the whole world, who you talk to, who you don't. And that kind of, I don't know, interests me overall. It's just, an engine, you see all these videos and how many could you click on and all this stuff is the allure of the internet. And you could always swipe more and see more and all that stuff, right? There's always more. But I guess there's always also, because we're finite human beings, a tendency to have these certain pillars, whether that's like uh I was never into like chat rooms because I'm a bit too autistic, and like I have a similar experience, I think, to what Trixie had with chat rooms, which was being like very arrogant and like when people disagree with me, I'm like fuck you and stuff like that. I'm not a very, I guess I'm not a very disagreeable person, but I'm also not a very agreeable person.
yeah,
Yeah, so like it was Trixie, uh, and before the Trixie, it was the Amazing Atheist who I had these kind of like I kind of based a lot of my like worldview on, or
two
if not
minutes,
worldview, huh?
2 minutes.
It's just 3 minutes, but
I know, but I'm trying to wrap you up just in case you
then
oversleep.
sort of techniques and sort of like how how things refract on my own worldview, where I'm like, oh, neat. You can also think of it like that. So I think of it like there's many lights, but how do they blend? And I don't necessarily need to be your light, but I don't know. That's I think how uh the positives of the internet work, and I think a lot of the negatives are due to like money and stuff, and people just, you know, the Onesians and the Shane Dawsons of the world with their weird shit, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's a
Uh,
pretty good summary.
so now I'm just political YouTube, Shape Trap House. Now it's like uh Mo Freedom Foundation is the main YouTube channel I watch. How about you?
To sum up, I guess Lex Friedman, Andrew Huberman, Joyce Mang's Type channel, Denzel Mensa. Lots of type, lots of science, lots of physics, lots of psychology, lots of histories, philosophy,
And we're gonna
anime analysis, sometimes movie analysis, or character analysis, things like that, and religious things like people's religious testimonies, sermons, audiobooks, uh, and of course, chatting with people and stuff, and making videos. Besides, those are the main things I can think of off the top of my head right now. And watching
you're
anime, watching stuff.
you're like I'm like I don't want to be uh disagreeable. I want to be agreeable, but I'm disagreeable. But you're like, I don't want to be agreeable, but I am agreeable, but I'm actually disagreeable. Kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
like you don't you chat with people, yet I think you like disagree more with them.
yeah.
And like I have this like personalist sort of sense of YouTube where I'm like you know uh okay, I'm not gonna say that. I was gonna say it's a Nazi thing. I was gonna say Hail Hitler.
30
But it's
seconds.
basically that, I think. I think basically a lot of YouTube is, they're not as bad as Hitler, but you're saying Hail Hitler. Whether it's this YouTuber or that YouTuber, it's like a mindless sense of trust in like Joe Rogan or some shit like that.
All right, we'll do more next time. So yeah, I guess we'll end it here. Thanks for listening, everyone. Enjoy. Bye bye.